During this scouting mission, George's troops accidentally killed a French officer.
Some of those traits die hard, John.
After some heated negotiations, Washington was taken on by General Braddock as a volunteer advisor and guide. Where's the woo, John? Where's the woo?
A college girl says, I saw a leprechaun. What did she see?
You asked these
that's
questions.
What I'm saying.
I don't have answers to because I was too dumb at the time.
Welcome to Into the Unknown with Mike and John, Season 3, Episode 7.
7! Lucky 7.
Lucky 7.
Lucky 7.
This episode has got it all. History, treasure, cryptids, ghosts, the Fae, and much, much more, including some hidden woo. It really defies categorization, and as we learned, sometimes that's a good thing. Now, coming up right now, Braddock's Gold. I'm Mike Duber.
And I am John Fitzpatrick.
John, I noticed there's no pirates. It's got it all but pirates.
There are no pirates
What's up with
to
that?
be seen.
That's some BS, man.
Well, you know, you ever take one of those, any of those surveys that say, do you prefer the beach or the mountains? Well, guess what? We're back in the mountains. We're back in the Appalachians. We're back in the Catoctins.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Dipping in for a fourth time? Third or fourth time.
But that's why we don't have pirates. There are no pirates in the mountains.
Well, fine.
Okay.
All right. So we left them at the Chesapeake.
Yes.
And we've headed west. All right. So tell us a story, John.
Well, our story begins with George Washington about to start the First World War.
That doesn't sound right, John.
It's July 3rd, 1754.
Oh, okay.
And Colonel George Washington.
He's got pearl-handled six-shooters on his hips, right? No. I'm sorry. Okay, I'll stop.
Colonel George Washington is in command of a detachment of Virginia militia and a few other colonial troops. Mm-hmm. And he's sitting behind the hastily erected wall of Fort Necessity.
I have visited Fort Necessity.
It's on my list.
Yeah.
And it's a necessity because young George is in a heap of trouble. Oh, his original orders were to scout this corner of the Virginia land grant in the Ohio Valley before Pennsylvania could enforce their land grant this far west. And if you visited Fort Necessity, you already know how that story ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, however, this was on the other side of the Appalachians, which formed a natural boundary for the English colonies, meaning that although the English claimed the land, it was already occupied by the French, who operated towns, forts, and trading posts from Canada on down past the western slopes of the Appalachians all the way to the Gulf of Mexico, or Gulf of America. And of course, all of this land was also occupied by plenty of Native Americans. Okay, so during this scouting mission, George's troops accidentally killed a French officer. And I'm going to butcher this. His name was Joseph Coulon de Villers de Jumonville. Or de Jumonville.
Joseph Coulon de
Villers.
De Jumonville. Interesting. Okay.
The exact circumstances of the death are a bit murky, but it didn't change the fact Jumonville was dead.
Yep.
And Jumonville was unfortunately killed amidst an official intermission of peace during the seemingly endless wars between the British Empire and the French. And now, French and native allied forces had surrounded George's men. Things looked dire for George. His military career appeared on the verge of being considerably shortened. The only reason Washington's unit hadn't already been wiped out is that the French didn't have artillery on hand to pound the Virginians into the mud. And at this partial impasse, the French offered a deal. They would let George's militia forces retire to Virginia. However, he would have to sign a document that promised the militia would not to return to the Ohio Valley for a year, or was a little bit more gentlemanly back then. So, unsurprisingly, George readily agreed. The only problem was George didn't really speak or read French. And the document included an admission that George had assassinated Jumonville.
Oh, the words have
Yes,
meaning. No.
Not killed in a military action.
No.
Or by accident in a sudden skirmish.
Which would have been much more acceptable.
And both were plausible historical circumstances, judging from the accounts we've read. Mm-hmm. But the language was deliberately murder.
Yeah, and assassination has that extra little twinge to it.
So while George returned home to Virginia, the French and British governments exchanged diplomatic correspondence about this recent unpleasantness and eventually found themselves back at war with each other.
Oh, dear.
It was inevitable. Mm-hmm. The two powers were always looking for an excuse. And this one was the 7 Years' War. And it truly was fought globally by the two powers and their allies. They fought in Europe, on the Atlantic, the Pacific, throughout the Caribbean islands, and across eastern North America, where it became known to us as the French and Indian War.
Yes. Yep. Rings a bell.
Yes. So most Americans today don't think much about the French and Indian War unless they're watching Daniel Day-Lewis's luscious, shoulder-length locks of hair trail behind him as he runs through the dark, romantic forest to the majestic soundtrack in 1992's The Last of the Mohicans.
That was lovely. That was lovely, John.
And truly, the soundtrack is majestic.
It is good. It is good. Yep.
The French and Indian War was one of those things that happened in that indistinct before time, that is, before the Revolution, and is therefore ancient history as far as most Americans are concerned. It is as remote as the first Thanksgiving or the Salem witch trials. It happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
They're all kind of indistinct. But this colonial period did give rise to any number of legends and weird tales we still live with today.
Dare they be paranormal?
Many of them are.
Yes.
Many of them. And we are going to get to them. This is my first of many possible French and Indian War based episodes, which is why you're getting the groundwork today.
The dose of history
right
up front.
You're getting the groundwork
That's
today.
right. We're going to eat our vegetables, but then the dessert's coming.
Then the fun.
Cool.
The hostilities underway by 1755, the British made good on their promises to defend their lucrative North American colonies and dispatched Major General Edward Braddock with 2 regiments of regulars, redcoats, with a plan to spearhead an attack into the same Ohio Valley that Washington had evacuated the previous year. His target was Fort Duquesne, situated at the convergence of the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers as they become the Ohio River. You know it today as Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Braddock.
Here we are. I'd be curious. I'm just sorry.
No, go ahead.
The confluence of 2 rivers. And we've talked about that before, right? And Pittsburgh. I wonder how many ghosts are in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I wonder. Some other time.
Okay. Braddock's army organized in Alexandria, Virginia, and across the Potomac River in Georgetown, Maryland. Yes, Maryland. Yeah. DC's not a thing yet.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yep.
After some heated negotiations, Washington was taken on by General Braddock as a volunteer advisor and guide. I'm sure these heated negotiations will appear later. I just want to note them now.
Yeah.
Because we may not get back to them in this episode, but it was a thing. Okay. Braddock's staff meticulously planned the Army's movement into the Ohio Valley. They knew that once in the wilderness, there would be no way to purchase or seize food. Between the 2 British Army regiments and the numerous colonial companies of pioneers, carpenters, and rangers, not to mention the artillery troops, detachment of sailors, and the camp followers, the Army likely exceeded 2,000 people. It was clear that because they would have to travel overland, all the provisions, artillery pieces, ammunition, powder, etc., would have to be loaded into various carts, meaning the Army would also include over 900 horses.
That's a lot of horses. Wow.
The Army set off from Alexandria and Georgetown in April 1755.
All right.
The Army then arrived at Fort Cumberland in Maryland on May 10th. Fort Cumberland was the westernmost British military outpost in North America. It was located in what is now Cumberland, Maryland, at a gap in the Appalachian Mountains that allowed further passage west into the Ohio Valley. Braddock's army set out from Fort Cumberland and began carving a road to support their journey through the wilderness on May 30th. And the road is the important piece of this story.
Okay.
Braddock's staff planned to use the same road Washington's scouting force previously used to pass into the wilderness. However, Washington's force had been much smaller, and Braddock's larger and heavier force faced significant challenges.
Okay.
The chosen route roughly followed a well-traveled but still very rustic native trail called the Nemacolin Trail. This was sufficient for a few hardy backcountry traders or travelers, but not for large groups. Let me be clear about the imagery here. Braddock's road was an engineering feat, but it was not a paved road. Even flattened out, the terrain was so rough it could not support the immense weight of the artillery pieces or the heavy supply wagons. As a result, the army damaged and wrecked many of the wagons, and progress was slow.
So it wasn't even a corduroy road where they lay the logs.
No, it was dirt. It was dirt.
Just carved through, dig up the stumps, knock down the
Yes.
trees, make a way. Okay.
But that's you're getting right at it.
Gotcha.
It's still labor intensive because you're widening
yeah.
that trail into a passable road for a large, broad column worth of travel.
At a minimum, just getting the artillery through.
And
Amazing.
I think we're going to discuss some of the engineering, but
Okay.
I'm trying to remember what I cut out too. It's been a while since I wrote this.
Yeah, no worries.
And there were some iterations, like how much about the road building do my people really care? Where's the woo, John? Where's the woo?
Let's get to the woo.
Get to the woo.
We got enough engineering with the Antikythera device.
Right. Okay. Much of the route is repurposed today for modern travel and is now the modern Route 40 or the National Road through Maryland and Pennsylvania, but not exactly. Those sections are, of course, paved now, and many of them where they aren't, part of, say, an interstate, and there are portions that are not, are often named Braddock's Road.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Very, very creative.
I will look for that next time I'm out there.
And they're obviously not necessarily contiguous. They may pop up in different places because
like Frederick Road
exactly
weaves in and off of Route 40 and
yes, okay,
comes and goes. Sounds good.
But there are many sections of the original road that are now more or less abandoned, and the scar of that military road from all that pull up of trees and whatnot from 270 years ago is still visible in the landscape.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I digested a whole book just on Braddock's Road for this episode, and there were photographs of the scar. It truly is a scar in the landscape that still exists today.
It reminds me of the passageways over in England. There are lots of trackways that just are maintained just from the travel of people to and fro. Interesting. Very interesting.
Okay. So by June 11th, Braddock ordered the army to strip down to the barest essentials and ordered the unnecessary baggage train to return to Fort Cumberland. This included about a third of the artillery because they just couldn't cart it.
Yeah.
He also detached the, quote, worst men from the colonial troops to accompany the baggage.
All right.
A second detachment was ordered to Philadelphia, more or less due east as opposed to south towards Fort Cumberland.
Okay.
So June 11th, there's a divergence. He strips down the army and sends things, various components, back. Let's keep that in mind.
I've got three, one going forward and one to Philadelphia and then another back to Fort Cumberland.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yes, but there's a divergence there, and that will be the crux of our story.
Okay.
The forest at this point was now extremely dense, and Braddock did not send out flanking scouting parties on either side of his often 4-mile-long army column. The British were unsuited for this duty, and there was a general distrust of the quality and dependability of the colonial rangers. But Braddock suffered the risk because he believed they were still too distant to be threatened by the French at Fort Duquesne, and falsely believed the forest was equally impenetrable to the French and native allies. Classic military blunder. In fact, the French began to shadow Braddock's army. And on June 21st, Braddock's force crossed the modern border of Maryland into Pennsylvania.
Okay.
After weeks of travel, the British Army crossed, and this is actually the second time, the Monongahela River on July 9th, 1755. But this is the important time, because near the conjunction of Turtle Creek and the Monongahela, Braddock's lead troops were ambushed by a force of mostly French allied Native Americans with a few colonial French units and officers. Now, I'm not going to recount the battle blow by blow, but it did not go well for the British, who were not familiar with wilderness warfare in North America. During the battle, General Braddock was fatally wounded, and after lingering in misery for a day or so, he perished.
Yikes. Sounds horrible.
Meanwhile, although he was not the senior officer in the expedition, Colonial Militia Colonel George Washington was the only officer with the correct experience to lead the remains of the British Expeditionary Force home. It helped that the French had deliberately targeted the British officers, and many of the most senior officers were out of action, so they weren't complaining. And George had also performed heroically to recover General Braddock, having 2 horses shot out from under him and sporting several holes in his clothing from close shots. Ponder that for a moment.
Yeah.
That's how close that was.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of myth around Washington being bulletproof
And destined. Yeah.
destined and bulletproof. And there was even an account, an attestation from an Indian chief who said, I shot at him numerous times and missed him with each one. And I'll have to dig that up.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I'm going to go find that.
There's a lot of mythology around poor George.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to demythologize him at the beginning with his mistakes. But
that's just history. He kind of fumbled a little bit.
And this is his moment where he really truly enters the world stage. Another reason to sort of go over this, because it will, and any future mentions will build upon this adventure. Washington organized a rear guard delaying action with his colonial troops and saved the remains of the British Army by ordering an almost orderly retreat. These actions redeemed Washington's military reputation from the previous summer and gained him no small amount of fame. Washington and the remaining officers buried General Braddock in the middle of his road and then marched the army back over the gravesite to hide it from the French and their native allies. And the gravesite was actually lost until the 21st century, so not that long ago, when, during one of the periodic improvements of the route for modern travel, a crew uncovered the general's body.
Can you imagine?
And his grave was carefully excavated by archaeologists, cataloged, and then moved to a place of honor on the roadside. So that's the epic historical setup.
Okay. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
I know you're asking, where's the mystery? Where's the woo? It comes in 2 parts.
All right.
Okay.
2 doses of woo.
At least.
Take 2 and call me in the morning.
There are 2 big sort of branches here.
2 acts.
So
right?
the first is a missing treasure story.
Okay.
There is a persistent story that Braddock's army left Virginia with at least 1 wagon of gold.
Okay. Now, why would they have the gold? Is this...
Well, that's a good question. This would have been intended to pay them, according to the story anyway.
Yeah.
This was intended to pay the men and or pay for provisions along the way.
Okay.
At some point on the journey, and as we've described, this is something he did with other baggage and provisions at least one point, possibly more of the journey, General Braddock realized he did not need to risk the gold on the frontier, and detached a small unit to return it to a British outpost.
Okay.
Clearly,
so sort of a miscalculation of the frontier itself. Like,
Yes.
there's not a lot of people out there necessarily trading in gold, or even
Right.
anybody there at all. Really, right?
Well, there were more. That's the interesting thing, is there were more people than we might imagine on the frontier.
Okay.
But your point about them, would they want the gold or would they want trade
Yeah, they
goods?
trade,
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
There are all kinds of things there. So clearly, if he detached the gold shipment, it would have been done in some secrecy to help protect the gold. While this story is persistent, it's not necessarily consistent. There is no agreement among the stories about when the wagon and bodyguard were detached, or where they started from, or where it went. No one knows if the detachment started in Maryland or further on in Pennsylvania. And since it disappeared, no one knows how far it got. Treasure hunters have scoured the Appalachians and valleys for some sign. One distinct possibility is that he ordered the shipment to head for Frederick, Maryland, which we'll come back to, which was a significant colonial settlement close to the frontier, but not under the same direct threat from the French that Fort Cumberland would have been facing. And frankly, historians doubt this story. They even deem it a distraction from more serious matters surrounding the French and Indian War. The real experts on the expedition, the ones who get into the primary source documents like ledgers, military records, and payrolls, the equivalent of land records, land bequeathments. Yeah. All right. Yeah. They say
See you getting excited here,
I know.
John.
They even say that Braddock had serious issues with financing the campaign and paying for the necessary equipment. Hardly an endorsement that he had chests of gold hanging about for future use.
Okay. All right.
So maybe. Also, the story follows a very familiar folklore pattern about armies, missing gold, hidden treasure, etc.
Okay.
In fact, there is an extremely similar Civil War era story about a Union gold wagon shipment in the same region of Pennsylvania, centered on a place called Dent's Run. Have you heard of this?
I've heard this one. I've not heard of, but I have heard of Jefferson Davis's gold story. There's a trail. Someone did something with what they had, the Confederate gold.
Okay. Well, the curious thing about the Dent's Run story is that two private treasure hunters, a father and son, actually discovered evidence via a metal detector of hidden gold in a shallow cave in the Dent's Run vicinity. Unfortunately for them, the discovery was on federal land, so they could not carry their magnetometer discovery further into an excavation themselves. Instead, they decided they would contact the FBI with the information. The FBI followed up with an initially small forensic team investigation that was then followed by a heavy digging equipment operation that was brought in to excavate what they mysteriously described as government property. The father and son were never officially told what was discovered, and certainly got no reward or share in a treasure. However, they sued the federal government, and the discovery phase turned up documentation that the FBI found gold and silver of some type.
I have heard of this story, and as I understand it, the government's activity was like in the middle of the night. They came in and just really did it in one day, and were in and out.
It was quick, and it was heavy.
And they were like, blindsided by their speed. Interesting story.
Yeah. So, was it the rumored Union shipment from the Civil War? Was it Braddock's detachment from 100 years previous to that? No one outside the FBI knows. So maybe Braddock's gold is still out there. And this brings us to the second legend associated with Braddock's gold. Among those who searched for Braddock's gold over the centuries, the frustrations of not finding the treasure have given rise to any number of explanations for why it stays hidden. One of the more fanciful stories suggests that a clan of leprechauns joined Braddock's army when the regiments embarked in Ireland.
Oh, wow. We're going back to the mother country.
Yes.
Cool. Okay.
After hitching a ride to the New World, the leprechauns took on their own duty to guard Braddock's gold.
As they should.
As leprechauns do, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You're seeing where this is going.
Yeah.
When the gold wagon was detached to return to the colonies, the leprechauns followed.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever the wagon and gold disappeared to, presumably the leprechauns continued to stand vigil, hiding the gold from the greedy clutches of treasure hunters.
Oh, those treasure hunters. So greedy.
And yes, there are plenty of tales from the hollows of the eastern Appalachians of leprechauns frolicking in the woods.
Interesting.
Which I suppose is whimsical. Except, in 1993, I was the general manager of the Mount St. Mary's College radio station, WMTB 89.9 FM.
Oh, man, you just jumped right back in.
I did.
Like no time
No
lost.
time lost. I took a call from the chief editor of the school newspaper, the Mountain Echo. And he asked me if I wanted to accompany him on an interview. He'd received a report of a ghost sighting in Brute Hall.
Brute Hall.
Brute
Is that
Hall.
where the football players were?
No.
Oh,
Brute was
Brute.
Brute was a priest who was important in the history of Mount St. Mary's, but we'll cover all that another day. In fact, one day we'll recount all the ghost stories of Mount St. Mary's University.
Yeah,
There
okay.
are a number
You
of them.
should do that. Yeah, that'd be fun.
But for the moment, let's just recognize that the second floor of Brute Hall Dormitory is notoriously haunted. Although the periods of activity seem to wax and wane, and they were on the wane when I was there. So this was the first I'd heard of, there's a ghost in Brute Hall. So of course I agreed to accompany him. He didn't explain why he'd asked me along as his second, and I didn't ask. I was just curious about the story. So I met him outside Brute Hall, and I was surprised when we climbed the stairs well past that infamous second floor. In fact, we went all the way to the top floor, and we met 4 roommates, young ladies in my graduating class. The editor introduced himself and me, although I was acquainted with them, and we all found seats. Then he invited them to begin at whatever they perceived to be the start of the story. One of them took the lead to describe the previous Saturday night. They'd all returned from their socializing, and it was late. They were tired. They all quickly fell into their bunks. Sometime later, the narrator said she heard the squeak of hinges on the dorm room standard wardrobe. So we all had the same wardrobes in our dorm rooms.
Yeah, I can picture it.
Okay. She chanced a look at the wardrobe and watched the door smoothly push open part way.
Okay.
And her eyes widened as she saw a little hand emerge and clutch the door's edge.
Fascinating.
So what happened next apparently occurred in the blink of an eye over way too fast. So I'm just going to read these bullet points, but you got to imagine them all going real quick.
Yeah, gotcha.
The small figure hopped out of the wardrobe and landed gently on the floor. The witness shouted in surprise and astonishment. The other roommates startled awake. The tiny figure squealed in horror and rushed toward the room door. The witness jumped out of bed and grabbed for something to do battle with the monster, then followed it through the door into the hall. The other roommates quickly oriented themselves, jumped out of bed to join their friend in the hall. And, encouraged the editor, I sat silently, and I have to admit, I disbelieved this account. I discounted it completely.
You've been a skeptic all your life.
And what? She asked. Did you see anything in the hall? No. It was gone. Okay, said the editor. What did it look like? Well, you're probably not going to believe this, she said, but it looked just like a leprechaun. So, like many real-life incidents, this isn't a clean, satisfying narrative. It happens suddenly. It's over as fast as it began. There's no conclusion as such, certainly no moral. Only the one young woman claimed to see anything, although her roommates backed her account and supported her, but they didn't really see much. And let's not forget their own admission. They'd been drinking earlier. So the editor didn't even run the story.
Oh, really?
Anything he would have printed was likely to reflect badly on someone. Maybe the witnesses, maybe the newspaper.
Interesting.
The appearance of a leprechaun on campus didn't even match or add to any of the traditionally acknowledged ghost stories at Mount St. Mary's, meaning it's likely no more than a half dozen people remember any version of the events. The 4 roommates, the editor, me, possibly someone else who lived on the hall who was the one who told the editor.
Okay.
Because I don't think any of the roommates called him. So somehow he got a hold of this. But
I'm amazed they all sat together to talk about it.
they did.
That's interesting.
And
Okay.
here's something else that's interesting. Gary Samuel, remember when we saw him in December? He knows these people.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So-
I was trying to remember,
Yeah.
like the tie-in,
Yeah.
the recent tie-in. That's right. Gary knew them.
He knows these people.
He knows them very well. It wasn't
Very
like an acquaintance. These
like
these are lifelong friends.
Like he snapped a picture of the two of us at the impromptu reunion and sent
Yeah.
it to them that evening. And I was like, and I'm sure they're excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the story. What does it mean? I don't know. I first encountered the Braddock's Gold story in a book about Appalachian stories under the heading Leprechauns. And when I read it, I recalled how one of my classmates had this random encounter with a seemingly out of place leprechaun. And believe me, I can't tie this directly, the leprechaun story from Emmitsburg with the Braddock's Gold detachment. I really wish I could. However, the school is within the search radius, even if it's on the edge. So maybe this was one of the Braddock leprechauns who wandered away from the stash.
Right.
I mean,
Panty Raid or something. I mean, was he a guy from the 70s? Leprechaun. Well, I mean, they're kind of nutty guys, aren't they? Leprechauns. They're.
I mean, well, and the school's got a very heavily Irish American populations, and leprechauns. They're Irish. They like to drink. It was
I mean, they're just
there wasn't much else to do there. I'm
college
afraid.
pranks.
Right. I mean, I really wish I could tie it more directly, but it in my mind, when I first encountered the story of Braddock's Gold and the leprechauns, it brought this odd encounter immediately to my mind. In my mind, there's a connection, and I don't know what it is. Before we leave, there are some more prominently mentioned possible locations for the missing gold that are far more likely than Emmitsburg. Centerville, Virginia is one such place.
Okay.
There, the story goes that on the outbound trip, General Braddock ordered 2 cannon be removed from the train. And we saw he did that. And buried for later retrieval.
Oh, that makes sense, yeah.
A portion of the gold coins intended for the payroll were poured into the cannons for safekeeping. Claryville, Maryland, in Allegheny County, is another potential hiding place, especially near the Braddock's Run Creek.
Oh, well, yeah. The place names usually have a reason.
It was a popular topic in the local Cumberland Times in that longtime editor William J. Hunt's column Across the Desk frequently mentioned it. These columns claim that Braddock carted the gold with him because he anticipated occupying Fort Duquesne and needed a payroll supply until regular supply routes could be established. In this version, the gold was buried during the long retreat after harassment from the native warriors forced them to lighten the load. In another version, Hunt wrote that the gold chest was buried near the Savage River in Garrett County, Maryland. And this is the version that says a leprechaun stands guard over the treasure. Okay, gotcha. At least that's the first recorded newspaper, whatever, aside from whatever other stories are out there. And finally, Grantsville, Maryland is associated with a story about a mysterious man in the 19th century.
19th or 18th?
I'm sorry. Yes, my glasses failed me there. The 18th century. Mysterious man in the 18th century who accosted a traveler on the road with the claim that he'd been searching for the gold treasure that his father hid while on the Braddock expedition.
Oh, wow.
He begged the traveler to assist him immediately, hinting that he'd found something and needed that immediate help. The traveler, however, refused. The treasure hunter simply wandered off
Into the unknown.
Into the unknown.
Wow. All right.
So there you go. That's the story
Interesting.
of Braddock's gold. How it got to be there. Like, why is this gold just hanging out in the mountains?
Yeah.
Why
yeah.
is it disappeared? Because the leprechauns keep it hidden.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are the leprechauns there? Well, we've at least got some evidence.
There's some evidence.
Some evidence that the leprechauns are still roaming around the Appalachians.
It's really weird.
It's a really weird story, and I think
weird.
that's how it all fits together in my head.
It does. Well, I like the times. I remember hearing this when we had originally talked about this, and I liked that connection that you made with the 4 college women seeing a leprechaun jump out of their wardrobe. I do have a question, and let's start here.
Okay.
So you're familiar much more than me in the cryptids and the lore and the beings and so forth. How would you, John, describe a leprechaun? Does he have a little short green waistcoat? Does he have a hat? Does he have the green pilgrim hat? Does he have little shorts?
Well,
and little monk buckle shoes on. Does he dance the jig?
I love it that you're describing it for me. I mean, you're asking me what do I? Because the answer is because I'm far more familiar with all of these things, and
I'm starting as a joke.
Yeah,
but on the same time, there is probably a description that you're going to fill me in on because a college girl says I saw a leprechaun. What did she see? So what do you think?
I mean, my guess is that it must have looked something very close to that stereotypical image that you're describing.
Okay.
We didn't go into all. I remember it's 30 years ago now.
I know. It's my own memory.
I don't recall going into a lot of detail about what makes you think it was a leprechaun. I mean, we just kind of took that on face value.
Okay. All
right. She clearly described a smaller, diminutive being. Mm-hmm. And it must have given off leprechaun vibe for some reason, if she called it like that. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think my suspicion is it must have hewn very clearly or closely in her vision as being something of stereotypical leprechaun description. How might I interpret a leprechaun? I think I have a lot more nuance, unfortunately, because I've been reading this stuff. Certainly the image you call to mind is a prominent one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm reaching for the cereal box, frankly.
Right.
I mean, let's face it.
Right.
And
that's the image that is known.
Decorations go up, and of course,
Yeah,
when this comes out in a couple days, people will put up these decorations.
Right.
Or dress out our friend.
We're also biased somewhat because when we went to high school, our mascot was the Gale, but it was based on the leprechaun icon of Notre Dame, just dressed in purple and cream and black.
Right.
So we've got that image in our head with with a bowler hat, but and it's iconic for us too. That's seared in. Mm-hmm. But leprechauns for me also have. They also have some association with cobblers because they would have been doing that kind of work around the house. Mm-hmm. They are household spirits that you can bribe into doing your work for you by leaving things out. They clean up around the house at night.
Yeah. I remember fairy tales along those lines. And I didn't realize those would be considered leprechauns per se.
Strictly. They have that nothing strict is the problem. The more you look, the less strict it becomes.
Yeah.
And that's one of the other issues is that they are, we clearly imagine them as being smaller, but they've been diminished over time by the church. And that's really why the small comes into mind because all of the fair folk, the fae, the Irish fairy people, start out as something very different.
Like the...
They are not Disney-fied Tinkerbell, cutesy fairies. They are dangerous beings that far back, they start as a Tuatha De Danann.
I was just thinking that. I was about to mention that.
And they are godlike,
full-sized,
larger than life. Yes,
glowing.
With their warriors, their mystics, their magicians,
almost like the Irish druid class type of character.
And they are they're like I said, they're very dangerous when they get when they're defeated by the mortals, the Gaels again. All right, yeah. When the Gaels come to Ireland and defeat the Fae folk, and they are banished to the fairy world, the underworld, the hills. That's when their diminishment begins, and then that image we have of the happy-go-lucky, you can't have my Lucky Charms leprechaun comes into play, is because of there are centuries of the church coming in and saying, well, that's foolish, that's superstitious, those beings are not gods, and so that shrinking of size goes alongside that diminishment of importance. That's the cultural memory of that, which is kind of an interesting image. It's a beautiful image in some ways. It's unfair to the Fae folk. So I have a very different image in my head of, and they also get categorized differently. Like you would never think of the Tuatha De Danann as leprechauns, cobblers, cleaning up around the house.
Well, that's what
they are. They are the nobility. They are the aristocracy.
Well, I'm trying to poke at their the resolution between the two, right?
Yeah.
If you've diminished them, is it something that they cannot themselves overcome, and that the diminishment is actually something so powerful that it does actually, cut them down to size, quite literally, so that they appear and they interface with us. So I'm not in that smaller form.
I'm not ready to tell my other fairy story.
Yeah,
I think we will do that on another occasion, because I don't want to drop everything.
No. Don't.
But
build another episode.
Yeah,
and tell us another good story.
You are getting at an excellent point about how much of this diminishment is
like actually powerful against them.
Yeah. Is it real? Is it and that's a whole other issue about, and it goes into whether or not you believe these things exist separately from the story. Most days I would tell you they don't, but I still get enough Irish in me.
Well, it is.
And and as I'm hinting, there is an experience that made me really wonder about that as well. I think they have the ability to exert more power, and clearly this diminishment is not all at once or universal. Plenty of stories well into the Christian period of Irish history continue to depict the fair folk as powerful, as large, as influential.
Yeah. Well, the size of them matters not, apparently, because our suburban, ours being suburban, but then just the Western United States view of these things is vastly different, as I understand it, than actually being in country, in Ireland, in Scotland, in England, where this is the history of the land there, and the populace, the people, the Irish, the Scottish, the English. There are many that
you don't mess
believe
with
in this.
them.
You don't mess with them.
Yeah.
They believe in it.
We'll tell that story another day.
And that's all I'm just. That's all I'm saying. Is that
don't go questioning
their belief.
them.
Don't question them. Don't walk into don't walk into the cops and badmouth them. Don't taunt them. Don't mess with them.
Don't taunt them.
Don't taunt them at all, because you're going to regret it.
Yeah.
And the people believe it. Now, if you were you send your average American over there and you said, hey, we don't go over there and these are the things they don't do, the American might scoff at it and just say, that's kind of weird. That's superstition. Superstitious, isn't it? Well, that's all I'm saying is just
I'm not a...
We're very much talking about the things that a lot of people push back on. Like, none of that is real. It's all fake. And so your heritage is screaming out like, no, don't mess with them.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah. And in a way, you're tempting fate itself, right? People, in the actor core.
So
it's break a leg,
right.
know, like those little superstitions.
Don't tempt it. Don't tempt fate.
Don't tempt fate.
And my personal experience with this came after, not long after, but it came after interviewing these young ladies and them saying,
"Oh, I think I'm recalling the story now. I won't bring any of it up."
They I actually feel bad about this interview, and feeling like I should have played with it more. I should have asked more questions about what they experienced.
You mean with the in college back in the day?
With the leprechaun here at Mount St. Mary's. I should have just taken it more at face value and teased that out and gotten more of the story from them about what they experienced.
It's hindsight.
Yeah, it is hindsight. It's also a sort of a recognition today that, again, whatever, I shouldn't have just disbelieved them. I certainly shouldn't have said, well, they were out drinking earlier, so that explains the leprechaun. Because as you and I have often said, people don't really see pink elephants when they drink.
Right now, in my younger days, I've had plenty of late nights, and I did not hallucinate.
No, that's not something. That's not really an effective alcohol.
I never woke up saying, "Man, even the pink elephants that they talk about and joke about, never saw one,
and
never saw something, never hallucinated."
Even if we say this was some kind of what's the term?
Sort of a waking dream
kind
of thing.
Right.
Sort of a dream state.
Something sort of stirs her as she's beginning to fall asleep. And is it a hypnagogic?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of
even if it was
ways
that
we can approach that.
There's plenty to tease out about. What did you see? Tell me more about why you think it looked like a leprechaun. I mean, you asked these questions.
What I'm saying.
I don't have answers to because I was too dumb at the time to properly interview this person in terms of just what did you experience?
Yeah.
Tell me, lay it all out.
Well, to me, that's the curious part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not every day that, even today and even back in our day, right? You're not running into college women who are familiar with what a leprechaun even is potentially,
right?
Much less,
and if they did
see something and then say, "I saw a leprechaun."
How many of them are willing to sit down with a reporter and say, "This is what happened to me the other night"? It
must have been pretty intense for them,
right?
Enough to.
So I don't know.
Unless they were gagging you, did you get that sense? Sort of that counterintelligence, or let's trick John to see if he believes it.
Don't think so.
Okay.
No,
I'm just saying.
I suppose we could. I mean, if we really, really, really wanted to run this down,
have Gary ask him.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I really, really, really want to run this down because I'm afraid the story will fall apart worse. Or at this late date, they may have baggage from their lives as well that have accreted around this, and to the point where they're like, "Oh, I was just out that night. It's no big deal." So they may not even really. That's why it's when I pointed out in the course of the story here. There are only 6 of us known to have any memory of this event. How do our memories differ? I remember it was reported. Great. I can say that as a fact. I can give you certain facts about, they reported out, they came home, they were starting to fall asleep. The one noticed this problem in the room. The problem became a leprechaun.
Right. I hate when it does that.
Yeah, and that's what they told us. It was a leprechaun. Okay. How do they remember it? Do they remember? Oh yeah, I had this interview where I told them about the interview about the leprechaun that was in my room. But have they explained it away for themselves? And that's 4 different people who have potentially 4 different explanations for what happened that night after 30 years.
Yeah.
So, is it worth going back to them? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, we could probably tease this out if we really, really wanted to, and get them on the air.
That's all
I'm
up to
afraid
you.
to.
Yeah,
I'm really afraid to.
I don't need to have the information. I just found it interesting that
now,
a young 18-year-old, 17-year-old is going to say leprechaun.
Yeah.
I just and I'm not entirely sure if I saw a diminutive fey creature running around, I'm not sure leprechaun would come to my mind.
Unless it had the other hallmarks.
Gnome. I'm more inclined to say gnome, and not because of German heritage, which I have, but just that's not the word.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just not the image, unless it had.
Get off me, Lucky Charms!
Unless it was trying to grab me cereal from me.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, and that's
Right.
that's what I would be expecting. But then again, I'm pointing at Keel's book
Yeah.
about the trickster, and it's like, yeah, it probably would have a green jacket and green shorts and little wooden cloggy shoes and have that.
The monk shoes, yeah.
The monk shoes.
Yeah, and the top hat,
Yeah.
or the bowler.
And the
Right.
the knee-high
Right.
white stocking
know.
shoe or
Now,
socks or whatever.
I guess the other thing that could be an association here is that Gary knows them because they were, I think they were all at Keogh.
Mm-hmm.
They might have been at DeSales, but he knows them because they were local.
Yeah. And
So-
I remember him saying, these are dear
Really
friends. We
dear
had
So
great times together. Like, they're dear, close friends. Yeah.
So they may have the same mental iconography we do about
well, that's
a
all I'm
leprechaun.
wondering. That's all I'm wondering.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what it was. But that would be the question that I have. What made you say leprechaun? Can you describe it? And
But I was too
I'm
dumb
just
back
curious.
then.
We were all dumb. John.
Yes, this
Don't
is true.
feel
This is true.
singled out.
This
Like
is
you were
true.
the only one lucky enough to be stupid.
No.
I had the
I just
luxury of being a dumbass too.
I just remember being very, very sure of things when I shouldn't have been.
Well, it's funny. Some of those traits die hard, John.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
Maybe so.
Yeah, that's okay. But it makes this fun. So it's serving you well right now to be a skeptic and a hard head and But I really like this story. I liked it just because that connection, and it's examining and looking at those weird little connections, however tenuous they are and however strange they are. I think it makes it interesting.
I liked giving this story because it did allow me to lay some groundwork for some other things.
Yeah.
I think we are going to end up returning to. Well, I know we're going to end up returning to the pre-colonial, or not pre-colonial, pre-revolutionary colonial period.
Let's do it.
The Bridgewater Triangle is high on my list, and that relates back to some colonial pre-revolutionary events that are also, Indian War type stuff,
Yes.
and not well remembered. In fact, that's one of the reasons why the stories linger, is that they can sort of exist in that mythic age in the mind. We will probably talk about the French and Indian War again because it's a favorite topic of mine. I'm trying to figure out how we can bring in some of the stuff in New York because that's a huge interest of mine. And there are some other weird stories up there.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what I'm kind of figuring out is that every state
Has weird stuff.
And I think it's just peppered all over, and we live in the middle of it. And some choose to ignore it. Some fall asleep in that suburban slumber, like where we are. There's probably city slumber, and there's probably agricultural slumber, farmer slumber, where it's like, I don't mess with the thing that comes out of the well. I don't mess with the thing in the lower 40 of the cornfields. I don't go down there after dark. Or I don't go out there in the full moon. Or I don't go outside when the dogs are howling and terrified. I let them in the house. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and they just ignore it, and they don't talk about it. And then when you dig on it, you go, what I saw, I can't explain. It flew overhead. It had chicken feet and worms coming out of its mouth, and it had one eye.
As many times as we've already visited the Appalachians and just the near Appalachians, we haven't really talked about Appalachian superstition. Many of the superstitions are exactly around that thing. They're prohibitions. Don't do this, or you'll attract something's attention. Don't whistle at night.
Yeah.
If you hear your name get called out, no, you didn't.
No, don't answer.
Wait until it's repeated 3 times or something.
Yeah.
And those
if you
things
hear a
gotta
baby
change.
crying in the woods, go in the other direction. That's a famous one.
Don't open the door just to a knock or something. And Appalachian folklore stories, I'm really beginning to get very fascinated by. And they can kind of be summed up with the story of, real quick, the guy sees his father outside. The father outside is saying, "Please let me in. Please let me in." And the guy's like, "It's dark. I should let him in." And then his father inside the house says, don't let that in.
Don't let it in.
I mean, it's
terrifying.
That dissonance, that dread, that sort of familial obligation thing going on, being torn, all of that is very Appalachian.
Yeah.
And that's why that short, anecdote is so evocative about those kinds of stories.
Yeah.
And it's such a mix of Irish, Scottish, Scots-Irish.
Well, they all
folklore,
brought them over.
German, Pennsylvania Dutch.
That's right.
As we've discovered.
I mean, and African.
All that stuff. African,
there's
yes,
African lore
yes,
that came
and
over.
native lore.
There's the voodoo and every different winding path of different, and then the intermixing of it that occurred down in New Orleans and in the Caribbean.
Yep.
How the colonial
and all that comes back
and the
mixes.
African all became an amalgamation of magic and entities and stories and tulpas and all of it. It's crazy.
One of the things I mentioned early on in this episode was that George, at the beginning, was on the, quote, other side of the Appalachians. The British colonists were told, don't go there. And after the French and Indian War, because that area was left to the natives by treaty, it was a hard and fast rule by the British government. Do not go. That didn't stop people from going.
Right.
And they were sort of outlaws for doing that. They were rebels. They were brigands. And I'm kind of overselling it, but they were people who were, definitely scofflawish at best, who went out there. And because of that, all of that gets mixed into this heritage as well in the Appalachian region. In addition to their folk beliefs from the old country and whatever they've been taught. But that's also churning that mixture because when you find somebody else on the frontier, whoever they are, wherever they're from, you begin to tell stories. And I know, I can't remember if it was this episode or our PIN report or any of the other things that we did today. I mentioned watching the Ken Burns country music documentaries.
That was right at the top.
And they are showing that same stew in the music, and that there were I think it was Charlie Daniels. That's who it was. Yeah. Charlie Daniels, famous country, sort of a little bit of Rocky, but country fiddle player, met Itzhak Perlman, violinist.
Oh yeah,
and he said, it was really a pleasure to watch you play the violin. I'm really more of a fiddler. And Perlman said, we're all fiddlers. Yeah. We're all fiddlers.
Yeah.
And that kind of interaction is the exact same thing that gave rise to Appalachian culture. And it's not universal. It's different regionally, even within Appalachia.
Sure.
But all of that mixture of culture comes in and the stories churn and they pop back out on the other side as something very uniquely American in the same way country music does. So.
Yeah, and it really is a melting pot. I mean, you've got. I mean, the music story of music in the United States is fascinating. Yeah. I mean, the spirituals, the traditional music, the more tribal type of work music that blended into the rhythm and blues and jazz and just all of those heritages wrapped around.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in the storytelling.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well,
and this story in particular, you can begin to pull those themes out very well. So that's probably a decent place to end.
I think so. Yeah. And I'm not even gonna sort of look ahead right now. I think we're still putting the backlog together as it comes to us. I mean, we have things in the backlog and we're looking at them, but we're gonna let it be a surprise. So anyway, all right. Any last final thoughts before we close it out? Anything we wanted to do?
Don't tempt fate with the Fae folk. We'll get to that story, but I truly believe that.
Yeah. I think John's being actually serious there, and I'm just going to believe him. Yeah. So, all right, folks, we've got a public service announcement, and we got this weird story thanks to John, and a lot of history, and then just an amazing amalgam of tales brought together today in Braddock's Gold. Well, that'll do it. We thank you so much for listening as always, and go out on social media and participate out there, looking ahead.
Facebook, we've got a Facebook page.
Yeah,
that is our main Facebook presence where I try to update that. There is a Facebook discussion group, which I need to do more with. But that's not for me so much as it's for the listeners. I keep hoping the listeners will find that and work on it and create a community.
Yeah.
I will mention we also have an Instagram page that pretty closely mirrors the Facebook presence. And yet again, I'll say there are a few other hidden gems out there, Easter eggs for you to find on the internet. And we have the webpage where you can use to contact us. I mean, you can contact us through any of these forms, but in some ways, if you've got a story, or if you're one of the 4 young ladies I knew in college,
that's right.
and you're like, John, that is not the story. How can you tell that story? That's my version of the story. Please contact us on the webpage, itupodcast.com. Leave us your version of the story. We will contact you. We will put you on the air. I will let you have full reign. You can have a whole hour if you want.
That's
to tell us your version of why you met a leprechaun, and how big a jerk I was in college. And I'll just take it. I will.
I remember you. I don't remember you being that big a jerk.
I was. That's because you loved me back then. I was a jerk. It's okay. I wasn't just a dumbass. I was kind of a jerk. It's all right. I'm trying. I'm reformed.
That's what life is all about.
That's right.
Is know thyself and improve thyself as you go. Awesome. And I'll just say also that on the webpage that I take care of just because it cements us on the internet out there. I do try and keep that resources page populated with the books we read and also the images. So when I say we've got images to share, I plop them on that resources page, and then there's another link that'll take you to those images. That way you can reference what we're talking about. So don't forget about that. All right, we're going to wrap it up. So again, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.